So today I have the great opportunity to talk to the two spokespersons of our Cluster of Excellence PhenoRob, Heiner Kuhlmann and Cyrill Stachniss. Heiner, could you please introduce yourself to our audience?
My name is Heiner Kuhlmann. I'm professor of geodesy at Bonn University, and also I'm one of the two spokespersons in the Cluster of Excellence PhenoRob, and together with Cyrill we are managing the cluster.
My name is Cyrill Stachniss. I'm a professor for photogrammetry and robotics here in Bonn, and I'm also a spokesperson, and the role of the spokesperson is actually to make the project happen. So to design the ideas, to set up a team, to get the funding in, to ship the vision forward, get people on board, and then try to generate the best possible environment for the research to happen.
Great, and what exactly is your research about?
Yeah, my research in the cluster is, there are two parts. One is georeferencing. As I mentioned, georeferencing means we are dealing in PhenoRob with some vehicles flying or moving on the ground, and with these vehicles we measure the plants, and for this we have to know the position of the vehicles and their orientation, in which direction they are looking, and we call this georeferencing, and I am responsible for delivering these georeference data in real time. This is my research in the first part, and the second part is obviously our cluster has to do with phenotyping, and phenotyping means to find some features, some characteristics of the plants, plant height, size of the leaves and so forth, and I'm measuring these phenotypes especially using laser scanners.
All right, and Cyrill, what are your research interests?
So I'm working with robotics, and robots always need to understand what happens around them. So a lot of my research activities in the cluster addresses the problem of how can we interpret what the robot actually sees. So you, for example, have a robot that has a camera and observes a field, and then we are trying to interpret the data, the camera data that the robot gets, and analyzes the data and says, for example, oh, what we are seeing is a plant or is a weed or an infected plant. So giving meaning to images is basically the research activities that I'm doing in the cluster.
Okay, and when exactly was the idea for the cluster born?
So it started in spring 2016. The rector, Michael Hoch, was visiting the faculty meeting and was making statements about the development of the faculty. And then Heiner Kuhlmann was not amused about some of the things he heard there. And so he came up with the ideas, we should invest in a new large-scale initiative and actually show the university what we are capable in doing. And this was the starting point for that. We set up, took a white piece of paper and filled it with our ideas, pitched it to the rectorate then in summer 2016, and that was kind of the starting point, leading to the pre-proposal, the full proposal, the defenses, and whatever was there to where we needed to be successful in order to come up with the cluster, and that's how it all started.
So being both a researcher and a spokesperson, how would you say has your role changed since the cluster has started?
Yes, of course. In the beginning, the focus was on convincing the rectorate, convincing the reviewers, so make a good proposal and prepare for the hearing and all these things. And now, because we are funded since 3 years right now, the role is more currently in the phase of make things happen, give some money to the researchers, quality control, and also the structural measures like equal opportunity, promoting young researchers, internationalization, and all these things. So this has to do with organization, with strategic decisions, with infrastructure development, and currently we are in the phase of preparing the next funding phase already, because we have to write the next proposal in 2024, and yeah, we are looking for that and preparing the things already right now.
And what do you like the most about being a spokesperson?
Of course, being a spokesperson gives you the opportunity to kind of shape what's going on. So again, I said we started with the idea of a completely empty piece of paper, just basically having both of us involved in the game, said what do we actually want to do? How do we believe we can put our competences into the game to make a change in whatever area there is? And then we talked to colleagues and started with this idea. And of course, being a spokesperson in the cluster allows you to have an influence in this vision. Of course, you need to also convince other researchers that what you're proposing is actually a good idea, but you're in the end one of the persons who can guide the directions, you can implement new ideas, you can try out, you can experiment and see what works better. And as a cluster, we are a bit more flexible maybe than a faculty or the whole university, so we can see each other kind of as a small lab experiment, trying out something new, and if it works out, we can try to export it. And for that, the cluster has the appropriate size in the sense that you have enough people around in order to promote a change and change something, but it's still small enough that there's a lot of dynamics in there. And that's something I really like in the cluster.
What would you say distinguishes PhenoRob from other clusters of excellence?
Well, obviously we are the only cluster of excellence which is related to agriculture in Germany. This is one specific characteristic. And additional, I think we are rather interdisciplinary. I think we have life sciences, computer sciences, technology, geodesy, plant sciences, environmental things, social sciences like agricultural, economics, and in comparison to all the other clusters in Germany, I think this is a broad spectrum.
Interesting, yeah. What would you say is possible now that hasn't been possible before the cluster started?
Of course, one of the possibilities that comes up is that you can actually bring a substantial number of people together and don't need to look for funding in order to get your ideas realized. So we have a substantially large amount of funding and we are fairly free in how we spend the resources, and this is great for getting new ideas on the road fairly quickly. And so the cluster gives you the opportunity to team up with colleagues you probably have never worked with, but where you both share a similar vision or see that ideas could work out, experiment, try to work together and ship that forward. And the possibility to do that at a larger scale, not just with one colleague, but with a team of colleagues, is something which is much easier if you have a cluster of excellence at hand compared to the setup where you would need to acquire actively funding with research units or other instruments.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you would say you are particularly proud of?
Currently, our faculty, the Faculty of Agriculture, is a substantial part of the university because we have this cluster, and this was not the case for a couple of years ago. I think this is obviously the case. And yes, for sure, we have a real-world problem. So, meaning the influence of the agricultural production on the ecosystem is substantial. And yeah, we have the chance to reduce this impact.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, we are both people who have an engineering background or work with technical systems all our life. And the cluster was one of the opportunities to actually take those technical developments and use them for a greater purpose. So with this cluster, we are at a scale possible to, I don't want to say solve, but definitely tackle problems of our society that we couldn't tackle before. And this is something which is actually a great opportunity and something you don't have that often in your life as a researcher, at least with a technical background, I would say.
So looking a few years ahead, what are your goals for the coming years?
Of course, we want to shape the cluster so that we will be successful in the second phase. This is currently the developments that we are ongoing. And we also need to broaden the cluster, bring in new people, getting new ideas in order to shape the landscape until, 2032, which is right now the horizon in which we are thinking. And this is an opportunity, it's a challenge, there are a lot of uncertainty involved, but the freedom to design a path and bring the right people on board, recruit the right people to do that is a challenge, but also a great opportunity and something that you don't have that often in your academic career.
Yeah, probably we should add that we have a lot of young people around us, so we have PhD students financed from the cluster, something about between 60 and 70, and we have some partner projects as well. So we have around 100 PhD students and a couple of postdocs and junior research group leaders. And yeah, this is obviously a great opportunity to promote their careers, and hopefully they will be the next generation of researchers in the field of the cluster.
So why is it great to be part of PhenoRob?
Why is it great to be part of PhenoRob? Because you're able to work with an interesting team of people from different fields. I mean, that's something that a lot of people say about their setup. But here the difference is that we actually have a substantial amount of funding around. We already brought the people together to work on one common vision, or at least one area of research which is directed towards the same goal. So you don't need to start convincing people from other disciplines to work with you and set up something new that's already there, that is in place, funding is there. So they are basically very little or no barriers which prevent you from actually doing those activities. And this is something why I think being a member of PhenoRob is a great opportunity if you're interested in this broader research, bringing in technical competences or competences from plant sciences or from economics or from environment monitoring, from phenotyping, and work towards a joint vision and developing this further, shaping not only us for the next phase, but to some degree also the university and the university landscape here in the local area.
Heiner, anything to add from your side?
Yes, I mean, we have the opportunity to change the scientific landscape, not only for the faculty, but for the whole university and the surrounding. We are talking about new infrastructure like buildings or institutions. And yes, we are talking about digitalization in the field of agriculture, specifically in plant production. And I hope we can make some contribution to that.
All right, thank you very much for these interesting insights, Heiner and Cyrill.
Our pleasure.
Okay.